Welcome back, everybody, to Cover 2. Time now to go on the clock. We welcome in Jason Wilde, ESPN.com, and we head to the Georgia Dome and welcome in Rob Domofsky, ESPN.com, and Mark Daniels, WTAQ, and, of course, WTAQ.com. Okay, let's start, Jason, with you. And on that final Falcons drive, which turned out to be, obviously, the game winner, did you have a problem with how the defense performed there? 11 plays, 75 yards. And the game winner with 31 seconds.
I mean, you would like them to get more pressure on Matt Ryan. You would like them to have Clay Matthews on the field, but he wasn't available. You would like them to have Sam Shields have an interception return for a touchdown. I did think Gunter got a bit of a bad rap. We watched back in the sports office the replay. The ball never actually got to him. The receiver, Sanu, got it first. My only thing is whatever your defense was at the end, and Mike McCarthy wouldn't answer. I don't know if it was Rob or who asked him. Whatever the defense was, I don't think you want Sanu being covered by Jake Ryan. Right. That would be my one qualm.
Well, I thought the biggest issue was, and Mark and I said up in the press box, the defense should be well rested. They were on that sideline for, 8.5 minutes, Mark?
Yeah, because
when Aaron Rodgers was taking that offense down for the go-ahead touchdown. So well rested, should have had plenty of time to prepare themselves for what was going to be a last stand, and they didn't get it done.
And as for the touchdown pass with Jake Ryan dropping in coverage to try and stay with Mohamed Sanu, I asked Jake about it. He just said it was a communication breakdown. I said, how many of those were there? Because Matt Ryan constantly, it seemed to me, found linebackers chasing wide receivers out here tonight. There were a lot of mismatches with so much attention paid to Julio Jones that Ryan took advantage of, none more painful than the last one that covered 11 yards.
Yeah, they only got him into third down twice on that drive, and it was 3rd and 2, 3rd and 1. Falcons' best team in the league on first down, and they were constantly in short yardage situations. Really put the whole playbook in play for them. All right, let's start with Rob, go to Mark, and then Jason. Aaron Rodgers last week with the quick passing. All of a sudden he looks great, a 300-yard passing game, 39 completions. Today he looked even better, even though the numbers were not quite as high. Rob, can we put to rest all the questions of when will Aaron Rodgers return to form? Certainly seems like he's there.
Well, Chris, you certainly couldn't put this loss on him. We'll see if it's the word we used last week, sustainable, just in terms of how they play, but we'll see if his level of play is sustainable. But you certainly can't blame him. He did just about everything he needed to do. He did mention after the game that they had a couple of wasted possessions, I believe was the term that he used, early in that third quarter where they could have gotten something done and didn't. But, look, the guys he had out on the field, Geronimo Allison, Trevor Davis, both those guys caught their first touchdown passes, first passes.
Yes.
Jordy Nelson's got 55 touchdowns now. Those other guys have one each. You cannot argue with the way they played as an offense and the way he played, considering who was out there.
Don't forget Jeff Janis finding the end zone as well. This reminded me a lot of Aaron's first couple of years as a starter. He drives them on a magnificent 86-yard march, consuming 8 minutes to get a lead. But, hey, he can't win comeback games because the defense bent backwards the other way. I thought Aaron was terrific. Both these quarterbacks were really on target. The only difference, I think they had the same number of completions. The only difference, 3 more incompletions, the last 3 after the Falcons' final touchdown.
Yeah, what I thought was interesting was that there were a few people that would point out, and not that we would at all, but that this was the 31st ranked pass defense in the league, right? Well, guess what? Some of the throws that Aaron Rodgers made today had nothing to do with the pass defense. Right. The touchdown that Rob mentioned to Trevor Davis, that was a vintage Aaron Rodgers throw. He's moving to his right, he's on the run, and he puts that ball in one spot, and one spot only that can be caught by his receiver, and he catches. He was pinpoint accurate on most of his throws today. I would say that what we thought last week, that maybe last week was a stepping stone for him to get back into the rhythm. It looked like it worked.
Yeah, he carried it over, no doubt, and that pass to Jordy Nelson was right in the bucket today. All right, Devontae Adams went up to him in the locker room this week, and Mark, we'll start with you, then go Rob and Jason. I said, it's probably unlikely that you can put up the same types of numbers next week, but what is it? And he stops me and he goes, why? Why is that unlikely? I said, well, it may not work out that way. He said, well, why not? Well, he was right. 12 catches, Mark. This role that he's on now, I know he didn't have a lot of yards today, but 12 catches, he's become an integral part of this offense.
Well, he has, and he also took Ty Montgomery's role as the wide receiver / running back. A handful of those grabs were in those kind of similar situations that we saw Ty with last week. And I don't know how often he practiced that formation, a couple of times maybe this past week. But Adams has been a target because Jordy's still getting a lot of attention, and he became more of a focal point against some 31st ranked pass defenders, and Aaron found him.
The biggest thing for Davante Adams is he finally put together 2 great performances. You think about, I wrote about this week, the New England game as a rookie, followed up that big game with 1 catch for 6 yards. The Dallas playoff game later that year, followed that up against Seattle in the NFC Championship game, 1 catch for 7 yards. So now 25 catches the last 2 games combined. He has definitely found a rhythm, and he's in sync with the quarterback.
I'm a little disappointed Rob told us about the story he wrote, because I was going to do that. It's kind of like retweeting people when they praise you for your stories on Twitter. But that said, he's exactly right. He stacked his successes. That's something that he needed to do. And they used them, like Mark said, in the backfield as well. Look, the people who, and Rob and I stood at practice during training camp and talked about this, anybody who was ready to cut him and give up on him, you were stupid. That was ridiculous. This is the reason that you are patient with this guy. He's gotten some opportunities and he's played well.
And none of us have mentioned that dreaded D word, which was an issue for him last year when he wasn't healthy. He's been catching pretty much everything coming his way. All right, Rob, let's start with you. Go to Mark and then Jason. Your lasting impression for you guys, it might be something you heard or witnessed in the locker room. Lasting impression from this game for you.
Well, it was something I saw and heard. I walked in at the end of the locker room after Aaron Rodgers talked. Mike Daniels, the last player in there, he had the stat sheet right here, and he looked at it and said, my goodness, we only gave up 90 yards rushing. We held Freeman, who's a beast, in check. And then he threw the thing and shook his head and talked about how frustrated he was by the way they let it get away.
This Packer team can make exciting plays, Rob. They can play some good football in stretches, but they have been shaved so thin that I talked to a lot of the guys in the secondary, and really they try to keep their chin up. I know they gave up a lot of completions and a couple of touchdowns, but all in all, I thought Gunter, Goodson, Hawkins is out there, Bryce is out there, are battling their, you know what's off as hard as they can. There's such a noticeable drop in the talent level from Shields and Randall and Rollins to these guys, although they're fighting.
Other than Rob's ability with props, which it's almost as good as when Chris Hibben tackled him on ESPN, I would say this, TJ Lang. I mean, he goes out of the game, he comes back in. I think Aaron Rodgers called him an ultimate warrior. He toughed it out. This is a guy that obviously cares a lot about it and plays really well and was playing hurt.
And I think we're probably going to see that based on what he told us Thursday in the locker room. This is going to be a recurring theme for TJ Lang because he needs an offseason to get that thing right. All right, let's go to ad-libs topics. We'll go down the line. We'll start with Mark, then Rob, and then Jason. Mark, they missed blank the most today.
I think Clay. I think they needed pressure. Their only sacks were back-to-back plays, and I thought that's when the game finally was going to swing in the Packers' direction. Couldn't get another one. Ryan was way too comfortable on the spot.
I agree. I mean, Clay Matthews, Jason talked about it. They needed a sack in that last drive, and Clay Matthews might have been a guy to get it.
Yeah, they missed a lot of guys today, but I do think they needed Clay the most.
It's a clean sweep. I would have said the same thing. All right, Mark, blank is the biggest reason for optimism right now.
Boy, that's a toughie. I'll say Aaron. I really think he's playing at a very good level now. These last couple of weeks, he shook off the early season questions. He's playing terrific, throwing the ball great.
I guess they can't get any more guys hurt. Well, actually, they probably can, but
probably could.
They should get some guys back, and maybe that'll help them, especially in the defensive side.
I think Mark nailed it. I think it's Aaron Rodgers looking like Aaron Rodgers. They need that for them to have any chance at all.
All right, the multimedia platform that is Jason Wilde was doing a radio interview down in our office on the phone before we came up here to do this tonight, and he was talking about how nobody impresses him in the NFC, and if you really watch football right now, it's hard to pick a dominant team in at least the NFC. Maybe you go with the Patriots, maybe you might pick the Cowboys, but Mark, I ask you this. I think blank wins are needed to get in the playoffs this year.
I think 9 will probably get you in at least as a wild card, but they always say 10 is almost book it. So,
yeah, I guess he who has the least amount of ties gets into the playoffs. There were 2 ties in the last 3 games.
Almost 3.
It's a fine Caddyshack reference right there. I think it's 10. But I think it's going to be interesting to see who ends up being the 1 and 2 seeds, because I don't think there's anybody that's a slam dunk for that right now.
You might get a 1 seed with 11 wins the way things are going right now. All right, and finally, real quick, this is easy. The Packers blank the Colts next week. Mark?
I think they beat the Colts. That's a really bad division.
Outscore them. It's going to be another track meet, though.
Yeah, I agree. They win.
All right, Colts are struggling along at 3-5. All right, gentlemen, thanks very much. We'll see you here next week. We'll see you when we come back as we give you the answer to our Packers Cheesehead Trivia question. That's coming up as Cover 2 continues.